It's deeply disgusting. I mean, it is clown world on steroids. And when I first read about this, Mr. President, I read it a second time because I experienced slack-jawed astonishment. And when I read it a second time and I realized it was true, I just wanted to run away screaming.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so yes, I'm finally going to start talking about what's going on up in the great state of Minnesota and with Tim Walz. Yeah, this is a massive fraud scheme, folks, and we've been hearing all these reports coming out, and look, I've been noticing them. It's not like I'm not wanting to cover this, but generally on situations like this, I like to wait until we get some more evidence coming down the pipeline because I like to give you guys the whole story. I don't like to give you guys just some of the context, right? A lot of people, they come out and start covering this, and they're like, they'll give you a bit of information, and then we have more information come out, so that's why I like to wait on these things, folks. And, that video, that opening video, that is from like a 30-minute rant by John Kennedy, which is my senator, by the way, so, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit biased on this, but, he just says things just in such a lovely way. He can frame certain situations, but I've took some clips. I took the most pertinent sections out of what he was saying, and we're going to get into this. We're going to see what the news is saying about Tim Walz, because this is absolutely absurd, y'all. Check this out. Look, we got this news article from News Nation, folks. Check it out. Walz faces political jeopardy over Minnesota fraud controversy. Political jeopardy? Like, are you kidding me with this? Why? Like, I know that you may not know exactly the depth of what's going on here, but by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly the depth of what is going on here, and it's absurd. That headline right there is absurd. But, like I said, this is from News Nation. Or is it? Look right down there at the bottom, folks. Right down here. Yeah, that's The Hill. Once again, folks, this is a pet peeve of mine, by the way, in case you're new to this channel. I can't stand the fact that a lot of these news publications, they will go and just literally, one for one, just Control Z, I think, or Control X, one of those, I forget, Control C. Copy, paste, just take their news article and paste it to their website and just say, here you go, we did the work, y'all. Not even go through it. Not even go through it to check for inaccuracies. But, okay, so you don't have all the facts, right? You don't have all the facts. Well, let's get into this and see what they say about this. And then we're going to break this down, and it's going to prove exactly how you're being manipulated by corporate press news articles, to the extent that you're being manipulated by corporate press news articles, and just how biased these people are. Check this out. I'm going to try to ram through this without too many interventions, if you will, just to get that, and then we're going to go through that video. And it's about 6 minutes or so. So it's a hefty one, but there's a lot of information to fill up. So check this out, y'all. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is facing a challenging political future as he finds himself at the epicenter of a growing fraud scandal in his home state. This sounds standard, right? Right? The controversy, which focuses on hundreds of millions of dollars allegedly stolen from a federally funded nutrition program, has led to more than 50 convictions. Now, and you might be thinking right there at the beginning of the video, well, hang on. Isn't it reported that it's over $1 billion? Yes, it is. And they just said hundreds of millions. Well, they can get away with saying that, folks, because there was like 3 or 4 different scams, and each one of them was in the hundreds of millions of dollars, totaling over $1 billion. So that's how they can get away with saying that. So right off the top, you know that they're already trying to manipulate you. They're trying to downplay the scale of fraud that was going on here. And they don't even tell you that it's coming from the Somali community. Now, look, I'm not trying to be racist or anything, but when you have a fraud, a scam scheme to this level, and it's exclusively coming from a single community, right? If this was white folks doing this, 100% white folks, I would have no problem with them saying, this came from the white community, right? Or the Mexican community, or the French community, or any of these things, right? The Cajun community, which is what I'm technically a part of, right? We're Kunas, if you will. That's what they call us, by the way, in case you're not aware. That's what Southern French, of people of French descent in South Louisiana are called, and parts of Mississippi. We'll be fair with that, even though we don't claim those people at all. Anyway, let's keep going. Hundreds of millions of dollars stolen from a federally funded nutrition program has led to more than 50 convictions. The New York Times gave the story national attention last week, highlighting statements from federal prosecutors that say as much as $1 billion in taxpayer money may have been stolen in separate plots. Now, they do give you that information, but once again, why would they tell you hundreds of millions of dollars first? Well, that's a manipulation, isn't it? And then they go on to say, well, it's just federal prosecutors that are alleging it's over $1 billion. That's a manipulation, folks. It has even Walz's longtime allies wondering if the governor should walk away from a re-election bid for a third term as governor. Now, once we get to that video, once we make it through that video, you're going to see that that is an absurd statement. That is outright absurd. He should walk away from a third term? No, he should be impeached, but you'll see. Don't take my word for it, folks. The governor, I think, has done a very respectable job, a good job in Minnesota for the years that he's been there or been here. But he clearly is vulnerable, and in my view, he is riskier than any Democratic candidate that might run, said Emmer Reichgott-Junge, a former Minnesota Democratic state senator and a political analyst in the state. Junge, whatever you want to say, I don't know how that's pronounced exactly, said fraud happened on his watch and that Tim Walz can't erase that. Hang on, it didn't just happen on his watch. Once again, folks, these people were complicit. They retaliated against whistleblowers, folks. Retaliated against whistleblowers. That is an absurdity. To say that. Oh, well, it happened on his watch. Look, I'm sorry. Look, I know I said I'm going to try to ram through this, but this is just so absurd. Look, you can have fraud happen under your watch, but if you take the proper steps to combat that fraud, bring it to light, and then rectify that situation, no problems, folks. Nothing to see here. Fraud is going to happen under anybody's watch. People do bad things. Right? Just like stuff happens under Trump, stuff happens under Biden, right? Like they're trying to, the political hacks. These are the people that will take like this Afghan national or whatever that was in the country illegally that shot and killed the National Guard and injured the other one. I don't think he's dead yet. He's in critical condition, but I think he's looking to recover from that. But anyway. They say, well, that happened under Trump's watch. He was, they use that argument that he was allowed into the country under Biden, but it's Donald Trump's administration that cleared his asylum process. Folks, I've gone over that. That's a disingenuous argument because, once again, that's immigration judges that do that. That is not the Trump administration. I mean, technically it is, but we all know that you have holdovers from all these other administrations that work within the federal government, right? This was a guy that was hired under the Biden administration, an immigration judge that Biden hired, as a matter of fact, that allowed this guy into the country, right? Donald Trump has been going through and trying to fire all these people. He hasn't caught all of them yet. It's absurd, these people are, so it's a disingenuous argument, very disingenuous. So this guy's being highly disingenuous. While she said the governor is taking steps to rectify it, including audits, those investigations will probably uncover more. Yeah, they probably will. So this issue is going to continue to surface through the next year, Reichgott-Junge added, saying it's a significant issue in the state and noting it is in the headlines virtually every other day. A second longtime ally of Walz's in the state told The Hill that the controversy is obviously not great for the governor and calls into question not only his gubernatorial re-election for a third term, but a possible presidential bid. Like, are you kidding me with that? Like, let's take and whitewash all this away right quick and forget about it. Let's take just Tim Walz in a vacuum. Presidential bid? Are you kidding me with that? Do you really think he has any sort of chance at all of becoming president? Okay, sure. The challenges are that Minnesota has a very low tolerance for fraud, waste, and abuse. It's a very low threshold, and that's one of the reasons the state has worked so well for so long, the ally said. It's clearly a real vulnerability. The ally noted polling that shows Walz's disapproval ratings rising in a state. A Minnesota Star Tribune poll out this summer showed that Walz had a 49% disapproval rating and that it had climbed almost 7 points since a similar poll was taken in 2022. Even suburb dads would bring it up to me over the summer, the ally said. Okay, so this is kind of being very, very unfair here, right? They're very biased here. They're trying to give Tim Walz all the grace that they can possibly give him on this. Now, once again, don't take my word for it. And once again, don't take just the senator's word for it, because we know politicians lie, right? But all of this is fact checkable. All of this is provable, folks. Let's go ahead and get to that video, because I don't want to go too long without that. So let me run that clip right quick, and I'll probably intervene just a little bit, maybe once or twice throughout, just to kind of throw my 2 cents in. Let's hit it.
There has been massive welfare fraud in the great state of Minnesota. And Feeding Our Future, the Somali nonprofit, kept going back to the Social Services Department in Minnesota saying, we need more money, we need more money. And at the height of the fraud, they were spending about $100 million a year. Not over the lifetime of the program, $100 million a year. One problem. There were no hungry children. There were hungry children. They just weren't getting any of the money. A group of providers, supposedly medical providers, got together and they went to the welfare authorities in Minnesota and said, we need money to help autistic children. You say, well, that's a wonderful thing to do. And then these providers, once the welfare department at the state government in Minnesota gave them the okay, they went out and started recruiting autistic children. You say, well, okay. We have to get the word out somehow. But they couldn't find very many autistic children. So they started going to parents in the Somali community and saying, can we call your child autistic? Can we certify that your child is autistic? If you'll let us do that, we'll pay you a bribe. Anywhere from $400 to $1,500 a child. Now, once again, the program, it didn't start big. These were sophisticated crooks. And its leader was a woman by the name of Asha Farban Hassan. She was also in, by the way, on the feeding of the children. All total, in these 3 fraud schemes, these crooks stole $1 billion of taxpayer money.
Yeah, and the major problem with all this, folks, is they weren't feeding children. They weren't helping autistic children. Not in the least, folks. As you heard, they were going around recruiting normal kids and saying, can we certify these kids as autistic? Right? When you can't find autistic, well, they weren't trying to find autistic kids. They were doing that intentionally, folks. It's not like they were being good-hearted people trying to go and help autistic kids. No, that's not what they were doing at all, because they didn't feed not a single freaking kid. They didn't help not a single autistic kid. They went exclusively to the Somali community and said, hey, let me certify your kid, right? These weren't just people at a nonprofit. These were medical experts, medical professionals, nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors, all of these of Somali descent. These are all Somalis, folks. This is why Donald Trump come out and was rambling and just wrecking the Somali community up in Minnesota. Right? You hear these things from Donald Trump, and he's like going off about this, and you're like, holy crap, where's this coming from? And you have no freaking clue. Well, you know what? The mainstream news, the national, the corporate press in this country, they don't give you the whole story. So you hear something from Donald Trump, and you're like, what in the F? This is why he gets such a bad name, folks, because he'll get some news, or he'll hear about something, and it'll piss him off. And then he'll start ranting about it. And then the corporate press, what they'll do is they'll take Donald Trump's rant and say Donald Trump is hating on Somalis, right? Or hating on these groups, or hating on these groups. It's like the whole thing with Venezuela releasing their prisons and releasing their mental institutions and telling those people to come to America. The corporate press doesn't cover that story. They cover Donald Trump saying they're letting in their worst of the worst. And then now everybody thinks that Donald Trump's a racist. They'll try to debunk the claim that they're letting people out of their prisons and all that coming to America. They'll try to debunk that. Hang on just a second. You can't debunk reality, folks. Let's keep going.
Well, hello, how could this happen? Why didn't the people in the Department of Social Services and the Welfare Department in state government, when they saw these claims arising, why didn't they say something? Didn't they go out and check these businesses that were supposedly sites to feed homeless children? Didn't they go talk to some of the children and their parents to see if some of the children really were autistic? Didn't the state authorities go out and say, can you show us one of the homes that you're providing to the homeless people? After all, we're spending $1 billion. They didn't, because the politicians wouldn't let them. And the crooks who were setting all this up, they're pretty smart. I'll give you one example. Remember, I talked about the nonprofit involved in feeding the so-called hungry children, called Feeding the Future. The rank and file employees in the welfare office started getting suspicious when the claims went up, and they contacted Feeding Our Future. And they said, hey, what's going on here? We're going to start cutting off these claims because it's getting a little bit expensive. And you know what Feeding Our Future did? They threatened the employees. They said, if you cut off our money, they sent them an email, and they did it by phone. They told the state agency that failing to promptly approve new applicants from minority-owned businesses would result in a lawsuit, feeding accusations of racism that would be scrawled across the news. Feeding Our Futures went to the state and said, if you stop giving us this money, we're going to call you racist and we're going to sue you. And you don't want to be in the news.
Now, every one of those politicians involved with that should be expelled and charged criminally. Outright, folks. Outright. Now, you might be thinking, how does this fall on Tim Walz? Well, as of yet, it doesn't. But we're going to come up to a bit that actually places all of this under Tim Walz. But, let's get to that when we get to that, right? Cross that bridge when we get there. All of these politicians, anybody that was complicit in this, should be absolutely expelled from whatever position they hold, fired, impeached, whatever that may be, criminally charged, and thrown in prison. Folks, including all of these Somalis. I think 88 people so far have been arrested, I believe. That is the current number that I last saw. I don't know, that number may have gone up, but anybody and everybody involved with this should be absolutely arrested, folks, because they weren't spending the money they were buying houses and yachts and cars and luxury items and all this other nonsense with your hard-earned taxpayer dollars. And I know you might be thinking, well, that's Minnesota, isn't it? Well, yeah, but this was federally funded, folks. So, yes, it did involve you. It did involve your money. All of it was federally funded, folks. This is so absurd. Like, this is one of the largest fraud scandals in American history. And once again, folks, I don't like to make all these claims without evidence to back this up, but this falls squarely on Tim Walz's shoulders. And here is the proof.
Now, here's what, and you say, well, why didn't the employees do something? They did. They told the people higher up, the people with the flags in their office. And you know what they did? Nothing. You know why? Well, here's what the legislative auditor in Minnesota said. He said that the threat of litigation and the negative press affected how the state politicians use their regulatory power. And here's what a fraud investigator in the Attorney General's office said. She said, there is a perception that, I'm quoting now, that forcefully tackling this issue would cause political backlash from the Somali community, which is a core voting bloc for Democrats. Recently, the state employees, they just said, look, we've had enough. They posted this. These are over several hundred employees from the Minnesota Department of Human Service who administer this program, who just get up every day and go to work and do their job and want to help people. This is what they posted on social media. I'm quoting now, Mr. President. Governor Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. I'm sure he wasn't the only one, because this fraud was an open secret. But I'm quoting from what the employee said. Governor Tim Walz is 100% responsible for massive fraud in Minnesota. We let Tim Walz know of fraud early on. That's the employees talking, hoping for a partnership and stopping fraud, but no, we got the opposite response. Tim Walz systematically retaliated against whistleblowers, using monitoring, using threats, using repression, and did his best to discredit fraud reports. Instead of partnership, we got the full weight of retaliation by Tim Walz and an indifferent mainstream media.
If this investigation proves retaliation by Tim Walz's administration, he's cooked, folks. He's going to prison. Like, there's no way you can retaliate against whistleblowers to a fraud scheme of this size and have nothing happen. Your presidential bid looks like it's in jeopardy. Look, no, I'm sorry. Like, you should absolutely be not only impeached, but thrown into prison for years over this, right? I'm sorry, you cannot be complicit with a fraud scheme of this magnitude, folks, and nothing happened. Your political future seems a bit shaky. No, I'm sorry, folks. News Nation is garbage at this point. That was a garbage article. That was absolutely garbage. Anybody saying, well, his political future is shaky or whatever, they're garbage. They're not telling you the whole truth, folks. They're not giving you all the facts. And this is so absurd. There's another allegation. There's a little bit more to this clip. Not much, but I do want to caveat this coming up, that this is just an allegation. This hasn't been proven yet, but if it is proven, folks, that's going to just tack on more years to these people's sentences, folks. Check this out.
And they are alleging that money, part of this $1 billion that was stolen, they are alleging that at least a portion of it went to a terrorist organization in Somalia that we've all heard of. It's notorious. It's an organization called Al-Shabaab.
Yep. If any of these people that are caught up into this fraud scheme, they're connected to this, if any of these people are American citizens and we come to find out that they did send money to Al-Shabaab, holy crap, folks, that's treason. That is absolutely treason. Just plain and simple, folks. And if Tim Walz is connected to this and retaliated against these people to protect people that are aiding our enemies, once again, folks, I beg the question, do you think Tim Walz's political future is just in jeopardy? No, I'm sorry. His political future, he's cooked at this point. His future is cooked. His freedom is cooked. He is just cooked. Tim Walz is cooked, folks. That's all I got to say about that. It's fascinating, y'all, the coverage that I've seen from this. You know, I've been hearing about this scandal, and I'm like, oh, this doesn't look good for Tim Walz. But, you know, once again, when you sit back and think about it, you know, in the Democratic Party, when you fail, you get promoted for some reason. I don't understand this. Like, these people just promote failures for some reason. So to the Democratic Party, you know, it's all good. No, there's nothing wrong here. That's why we get articles like you got from News Nation. Well, maybe his political future is in jeopardy. Maybe he's not going to have a third term. And his presidential bid looks grim. Like, are you kidding me with this? Like, his freedom looks grim at this point. The future of his freedom. He might go to prison, folks. But, you know, once again, that's how it is in the Democratic Party. But in the real world, you know, when people actually do get held to account, there's way too much evidence out there right now for this not to affect his personal life. Seriously. Like, there's way too much evidence out there. The whole Al-Shabaab thing, that would be, as kind of a caveat at this point. It's just kind of a side thing. If they can prove it, it's going to be hard to prove. I'm not going to lie about that. It's going to be very, very hard to prove that, folks. But if that happens to affect this case at all, holy crap, that's just going to turn this up past 11. It's going to be bad for these people, folks. And it's just a shame, you know, the corporate press and the mainstream news, they are complicit. They're just indifferent to these things. Apathetic, if you will. They're not giving you all the details. Not at all. They're like, oh, well, these details don't matter. He retaliated against these whistleblowers. That doesn't matter. We're not going to include it because it's an allegation and it looks bad. That's basically what they're doing with this, folks. But this is all absurd. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. That's all I got. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. Click that join button, sign up, and become a member. That's the best way to help this channel expand and grow, folks. And look, you know, God has a plan for all of us, folks. He absolutely does. So if you're feeling down in some sort of a way, look, I'll put it to you like this. God is never going to put you through something that he knows you can't make it through, that he knows is going to break you. You will never be put in front of something that you cannot overcome. You can absolutely overcome any obstacle that is put in front of you, folks. All you got to do is surrender. Surrender your will to God's will. Turn your life over to Jesus. That's all. That's it. That's all you got to do. Accept that salvation because he died on the cross for us. We must accept this, folks. We must accept that. And things will get better, folks. You will see a change. But like I said, you guys try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.